welcome to another episode of Raw Conversations. I'm your host, Sharon Cryan. I'm the founder and CEO of Foodnerd, Inc. And we will be sharing insights and having meaningful conversations with some amazing people in the plant-based community. And today I'm super geeked about our guest today. We have Doug Evans. Doug Evans is an early pioneer in, I think, health food movement in general. After losing his mother to cancer and his father to heart disease and watching his brother suffer through diabetes and 3 strokes, he invested and co-founded Organic Avenue, which is one of the first organic cold pressed juice and raw food retailers in the entire US. He has also created Juicerio, which was the first cold press juicing system that you can have in home, which is pretty incredible. And now Doug lives off the water grid and food grid on his own land, private hot springs, over in California. And he has created a Sprout Lab where he has also just wrote and released this book, which is called the Sprout Book. I like to think of it as like the Sprout Bible. And I am insanely honored to have him on the podcast today. Doug, thank you so much for being here. This is literally, it's like Christmas for you. You've really set the stage for everything that I believe as far as nutrition. And so I'm super honored for you to be here.
Well, thanks so much for reaching out, Sharon. You're doing great work, and you're one of the few things that are in the supermarket that I would even consider buying. Like, I go into the supermarket and it's scary in there. It's really scary. So I know the integrity of your products and the disciplines that you have to keeping it real, keeping it raw, keeping it enzymatically alive. Those are the things that are super exciting. So I'm happy to be here with you. You're a great entrepreneur. You've got a big heart, and happy to support you.
Oh, thank you so much. It's so exciting. Okay. So many things I want to cover, but I think I kind of want to set the stage real quick. And, if anybody listening, if you don't really know what sprouts are, I'm sure you probably have heard of them if you're on this podcast. But sprouts, really real quick, if you just had to explain the definition of a sprout, what would you tell people? Like, what is a sprout?
Yeah, so it's really interesting because sprouts are the product of seeds that have been germinated. And seeds have been around since the beginning of time. So there would be no plant life on this planet without seeds. And the normal process from the beginning of time, billions of years, is that seeds germinate and then grow into mature vegetables, fruits, vegetables, etc. And sprouts are defined in this little phase from taking a seed, which is a complete plant organism, a living plant organism in its dormant state. And then when it germinates, it's starting to grow and it's coming alive. It's like you're waking up a bear out of hibernation. And it grows a tail, and then it grows further, it grows leaves. And as it's becoming alive, it's gaining momentum. And so sprouts is defined in the context of our dialogue are living seeds that have been germinated and are now, and this is probably new, at least at mass, is edible food. So if there's a mission that I have, it's helping create a new food category called sprouts, because today sprouts were predominantly used as part of the process of creating organic or inorganic gardens and farms and vegetables, but they weren't used as a food source.
Right.
But when I moved to the desert 2 years ago, I was not only in the Mojave Desert, I was in a food desert. And there was not access to health food stores, organic restaurants, vegan cafes, where when I was living in New York, LA, or San Francisco, ubiquitous access. So for me, when I wanted to eat, and I remember, and I've been eating this lifestyle exclusively 21 years, but I was first exposed to sprouts probably 25 years ago. So in the back of my mind, when I saw the sprouts, I was like, oh, well, if I'm ever really hungry, or if things hit the fan, I can always revert to sprouting. So that when I came to the desert and things don't grow easily in the desert, that's when I started to sprout. And the more I sprouted, the more obsessed with sprouting I became, the more research I started to do, the more experimenting that I did. And as a result, I had this super download saying, oh my God, why isn't the whole world eating sprouts? Because they are nutritious, they're delicious, they're affordable, right? And there's no, like, to me, there's no downside, that I could not believe that everyone just wasn't eating sprouts at every meal or as a meal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's, so I completely agree with everything that you said. And I think that, to start, the definition of a sprout, I think it's too complicated. I think people forget, like, it's a plant. It's a plant just like any other plant is a plant. And I think that people in their mind, they separate it. They're like, sprout is some unidentified thing that I don't really know too much about, so I'm not even gonna like go over there. And I think that's kind of where, when you had this epiphany, right, where you're like, oh my God, like, sprout is a food source in and of itself, and it's not just a food source, it's the best food source. And I think, if everybody had that same epiphany, and I had that epiphany, and it was just like, oh my goodness, like, I just want to tell the world about it. But could you imagine if everybody conceptually understood what a sprout is, and that it wasn't some foreign, thing that to be scared of, or something that's just maybe a little topping on a salad, but instead it's in and of itself probably the most cost effective, most nutritious way to feed the entire planet, to save, to end world hunger. I mean, I'm sure that you probably feel the same way, that sprouts solve so many issues in our food system on this planet. And I guess the way that you wrote this book, I feel like this is the way that people can actually have this epiphany. You're right. They don't have to do all the research, and they don't have to live this. They just read this book and they're going to be like, oh, wow, this is one of the best arguments I've ever read. How come I don't know about this? Right. So why do you think that people don't know about sprouts? Like, why do you think our system is that way?
Well, at one point in time, people who were growing fruits and vegetables had gardens, had access to land, and it was just a natural process. And from a yield perspective, if you have time, and if you have land, and if you have soil, and if you have sunshine, it's much more efficient to grow bigger things, store them, divide them, and transport them. So from a level of food systems, the vegetable supply chain was to grow things as big as possible and use the benefits of nature and the seasons. So that's just how vegetables were consumed. There were some cultures where they consumed sprouts, like in Asian cultures, they had mung beans, and in the US, they had the hippies with the alfalfa sprouts. But by and large, sprouts were not a food category. They were used as a garnish or as an addition. And that's because there was so much access to other foods in their mature state. So if we think the purpose in nature of a sprout really wasn't as a food source, right? So sprouts were wildly cultivated in nature to grow wild fruits and vegetables in jungles and forests and the land. And that's the way they were. The insight that I had in my epiphany, and I like that word epiphany, was that this is very real and contemporary, that you don't have to wait weeks or months or years to have food. You don't have to go spend several dollars per ounce or per pound to buy produce that may be shipped around on trucks using fossil fuel, may or may not be sprayed or contaminated or anything. That you could get organic seeds, get some water, get a
Yep.
simple mason jar, glass jar, recycled clamshell tray or something. And these seeds, they want to sprout. It is
Right.
literally like if you light a firecracker, that firecracker wants to like pop. Like seeds want to sprout. Like it is the history of the universe in every single seed, and the seed's definite purpose, mission in life is to sprout and grow into food.
Right.
And so I just think that we did not operate as a society in thinking about how do we feed 10 billion people, right? So much of the food industry is profit motivated, and the goal is to see how can we make the most amount of profit, which means the lowest possible cost and the most kind of brain programming of people to get addictive behavior. So what's addictive, and it's well articulated in the book by Dr. Doug Lisle and Dr. Alan Goldhammer in the Pleasure Trap book, and there's other books like Fat, Sugar, and Salt, and so many of them are covering the issue that fat, sugar, and salt are addictive, and that release serotonin and dopamine in the brain and make people eat when they're not hungry, which is even obvious, like in the Lay's potato chip or Pringles potato chips, you can't just eat one, right? Because the fat, the grease, the sugar from the carbohydrates, it makes them highly, highly addictive. So if you're able to take control of your own destiny and just say, aha, there's probably no other proverb that is as true as you are what you eat, that every cell in your body is formed from the cellular reaction to the consumption of the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the food that we consume. So do you want to be built on Flintstones chewable vitamins, Pringles and Captain Crunch and Coca-Cola, or do you want to be built like a horse, right?
Right.
Eating, I mean, horses basically eat mature alfalfa sprouts grown into alfalfa hay, right? So,
Right.
so the level of just this disconnect in our supply chain, in our consciousness, is so much affected by marketing and profit that there's nobody who is out there, like was out there, I should say, in 2020, beating the drum saying, eat sprouts. Sprouts are food. Sprouts are nutritious. Sprouts are delicious. And so that's where like I'm there, out there, kind of spreading this message. And it's amazing. I mean, the book is in its third printing already. It's only been out in 90 days. And I'm getting posts every day. If you look at my little Instagram, like every day, people are so proud that they are sprouting on their own. And it's interesting. I've never experienced that kind of like outside love from strangers, right? And it's like, oh my God, look at my seeds. And like, I'm like, wow, you added water to some mung beans in a mason jar and you strained them for 3 days and now they're busting out tails, and you're excited, and I'm excited that you're excited. And I think that everyone can join this sprouting party.
Absolutely. No, that's I think that is one of the most exciting things about them is you don't realize how like satisfying and just I don't even know, it's kind of like we're so out of touch, like you talked about with nature. Like none of us really, I mean, if we have gardens, they're kind of like little small hobbies, right? But, we're so out of touch with the way that we used to when everybody was connected to their food. Because if you did grow your food, you may not have had it or access to it. And so and you use the word disconnected, which is like, we are just so disconnected with nature when it comes to our food. Like most people don't even know how things are grown anymore. And especially the younger generation, we have no idea, where food comes from. And so the concept, which is why the concept of a sprout can be so foreign, because people don't even know how a potato grows. Like, people don't even know these basic things that it used to be just instinctual to us. And so that disconnect, I think, is something that, sprouts can help bring us back. They can bring us back to nature, because you can have it in your kitchen and you could literally feel like the most non-connected person to nature. And then 3 days later, after growing a sprout, you feel so empowered. You feel like, wow, if anything were to happen to me, I know I could grow these, right? And it's your book talks about one of the benefits of being empowered. And I think that's what everybody is posting, right? Everybody is saying, like, I didn't know that I could do this, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't have to be a farmer to feel this connected to nature. So I think that's one of my favorite things. I always have sprouts growing. To me, they're part of my every meal. Like, every meal, if it doesn't have sprouts or the bulk of it isn't sprouts, I've just been eating this way like you have, not as long as you have, but once you feel that empowerment and then you feel the health benefits together, it's like the perfect equation to actually make the change, actually have your lifestyle shift in this direction. And so I kind of wanted to ask you, maybe some personal questions about the biggest health improvements that you saw for yourself. When in the beginning, when you first started eating sprouts, where was the shift? Like, where did you and you were also plant-based as well. And so I know that was a whole nother shift for you as well, if you want to talk about that. But where was the shift where you were like, these sprouts aren't just a garnish. They've done X, Y, and Z to my health. Like, where was that shift for you?
I mean, I think most people who experience plant-based lifestyle at some point find some vegan junk food,
Right.
and they feel it because it feels really good when you're chewing it and when it's going down, and then they get the feeling of like, "Ugh, why did I do that?" Right? And so, junk is junk along the way. And so my diet really, back in 1999, before Organic Avenue, I was eating pretty much anything,
Right.
street food, processed food, junk food, fast food. And I had no connection between the food and health and weight and energy, etc. To me, food was a means of recognizing my newly found affluence. Like, I was working hard, I was making money, and a way of rewarding myself was by eating well, right? And that meant I didn't have to ask my mother for seconds of processed macaroni. I could go to the finest Italian restaurant and I could order whatever I wanted, from the calamari and different kinds of pastas and different desserts and cannolis. And that was how I knew that I arrived, right? Because I could order whatever I want, I could pay for it, I could eat it, and there were fireworks going off in my brain as I was eating these extremely flavorful, seasoned, fat, sugar, salt, oil, processed parts. It was like fireworks in the brain. When the first probably meaningful book I read was Nature's First Law, The Raw Food Diet, David Wolf's first book. And that book talked about like raw food. And it resonated at such a deep level. Like, it was incomprehensible to me. I was like, why am I eating dead food when I could eat raw food? Like, the first thing. So that, in a very fast pace, in a 2-week period, I went from eating anything to vegetarian, vegan, raw vegan.
That's
And
a huge step.
yeah,
Yeah.
and when I made that shift to raw vegan, then my quest was like, okay, I'm raw, right? I feel great. I'm raw. What am I going to eat, right? And so I created a parameter that I was going to eat in order to be raw. I was going to I was going to eat whatever I wanted that was fresh, ripe, raw, organic, plant-based, fruit, vegetable, seed, nut, or seaweed. Like that was my palate. And I have to say, Sharon, it's easy to eat fruit. Like fruit is delicious, right?
Mhm.
And it was easy to eat certain greens, like romaine lettuce was easy, right? Certain kale, that was a little tough. Chard was tough. Leeks and other things were tough. When I discovered avocados, right,
Mhm.
and tahini, like, right,
My
that
avocado.
yeah, that was like my magical things, like tahini and avocado, and then fresh garlic, fresh onion, the seasonings with those, and I was making dressings. That was just easy, and it was like a party. So, and when I was eating raw, I was able to eat as much as I wanted until I was no longer hungry or full. I didn't count calories. I didn't, worry about things. It was just like, oh, is this fresh, ripe, raw, organic? And I just started to feel good. I shed about 38 pounds of unnecessary weight that had been built up. And I was, I guess, in my mid 30s when this happened, 33 years old. And it just felt like light on my feet. Like I just felt light. I felt energetic. Um, and I have to tell you, I'm not on drugs. Like, so I mean, I could be in a corporate office right now and really focus, but um, I'm not on drugs. Like, this is what's happening is I am in my element where my environment is great on the outside. Like I live in nature, right? And then my environment on the inside is I am fueled by sprouts. Like I'm eating sprouts and I'm eating fruit and I'm eating some vegetables. And so as a result, like eating sprouts to me, it's just like eating fruit where the largest component by volume is probably water, right? And the
Mhm.
second component is fiber. So, what is my diet? It's fiber and it's water, and it's water that's filtered through organic plants, right? It's not like I'm just drinking, spring water or bottled water or filtered water. My primary water source is coming from the plants. So, how do I feel? I feel like I'm 54 years old. I feel like more energetic, more clear, more powerful, smarter than I ever have in my entire life. I'm at my high school weight. So when I got out of high school, before I went into the army, I'm at that weight of like
Wow.
around 162, 163. I'm at that weight. And I can run, I could jump, I could swim, I could climb, and I just feel extraordinary along the way.
That's amazing. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, and you know, it's for you to feel this, right? Because I felt a shift, and some of the people that I know that have made that journey, you know it because you feel it. And when people who haven't made the shift and they're eating the standard American diet, they don't know the level of health and clarity that you're saying that you experience. And I guess, were there any moments, when you thought about wanting to go back to the standard American diet? Were there any moments, because people say, "Oh, I just love these foods so much. I don't think I can only eat, raw plant-based, or even 80-20% raw plant-based. Like it's too much because I love these foods so much. They mean so much to me." Like, were there any moments that you had after you made that transition? or is it's so empowering, it's like not even a thought for you?
Oh my God. I had so many moments and they were in my nightmares. Like those were nightmares. Like I
Oh,
had chicken wing nightmares or steak nightmares. Um,
right.
but like in my conscious self, like no way. Like I
Mhm.
look at it, it's like not even food. It would be like you saying, "Hey Doug, do you want to eat this tennis racket?" And I'm like, "I know, Sharon, I don't eat tennis rackets. Thank you so much." Right?
Right.
So the other stuff, I swear, like I look at it and like I look at bread, like white bread, Wonder Bread, and I'm sure there's some really good Ezekiel breads and sourdoughs and homemade and vegan breads, and I don't want to judge them. But when
Right.
I look at, like Wonder Bread, white bread, it would be like saying, "Doug, do you want to eat a stack of paper?" Like I look at it and I'm so tuned in. Like right
Right.
now, there's almost a level of sensory aura halo, and this sounds really woo woo, that I can look at something and wave my hand over it and bring it close to me and go, is this going to serve me? Is this, is this good for me? What's the
Oh,
all nature and elements?
right. And so kind of what you're tuning in on right now is your self-awareness, right? So if something is, if your body wants it, like you have a visceral response when you look at something. And I think if I had to say the biggest issue right now with our understanding of health and nutrition is that we don't have that as a culture. We don't have that connection to ourselves that says, I know this is good for me or not, right? And that's, to me, I think the saddest thing that we've lost, right? Is being able to say, I know that's not good for my body because I can feel it in my cells, right? Like I can feel that that's not gonna benefit me, or I can feel that that's completely gonna harm me. And when I explain to people what I eat or why I'm turning down that piece of pizza, like, how could you turn this down? This is the best pizza in the city. Like, I don't understand. It's almost like it's a different language that you speak, right? You're just like, I just, like, my cells don't want it. And you can start to get into, people are like, oh, that's so hippie or that's so woo woo. But it's, how do you, like, trying to articulate to somebody that feeling of self-awareness, is, to me, it's probably the hardest thing so far, because you truly can't understand how good it feels to feel so clean and like clear, have so much clarity, unless you feel it for yourself, right? Until then, it's so like over here in, imaginary, but I mean, you live it every day of your life, and you're eating predominantly sprouts. So I imagine you're so tuned in and plugged in with your self-awareness. Um, I guess how do you not convince people, because it's not a matter of convincing people, but how do you, truly articulate that connection with, to the average person, right? To somebody that is a working professional. Like, do you find that's really difficult? Because I feel like I just, I
Yeah,
fall over my words every time.
yeah. I think the key thing is that you just have to do your thing,
Right.
right? You do your thing, and to me, it's about attraction, not promotion.
Mm.
And uh, it's like talking to you is like preaching to the choir, right?
Right.
So it's very easy. Like you're gaga, everything that I say, that's great, right? So, but what I'm doing is I'm not trying to convince anyone. I'm not trying to persuade anyone. What I'm doing is I'm living my life, and my goal is to eat the highest quality nutrients on a per calorie basis. And I'm using food as fuel. And I'm deriving pleasure from other things in my life. That
Yeah.
food is not the source of pleasure. If food is your source of pleasure, you will die an uncomfortable, unhappy death. Like it's just inevitable. And so the thing that what I try to do is, and by the way, this was a big thing for me to write a book, because I cheated my way through high school. I didn't go to college. I wasn't a student. I wasn't very articulate. I didn't read. Like, I was very insecure about all of my writing. Very insecure. And like, my life was pretty comfortable. Like, I'm living on an oasis, I got low taxes, like, things are pretty cool here, right? And so I was comfortable. But the challenge of writing 50,000 words and doing the primary research and fact checking and chasing down, these doctors from Dr. Dean Ornish and Dr. Axe and Dr. Goldhammer and Dr. Khan, and all these people. It was very hard. It was very hard to get them, but I just felt like, you got to do this. This is important. And now that I'm seeing the momentum of people who you never in a million years would think would become sprouters, like Juji Mufu. Did you see the Juji Mufu post? Have you seen that?
No,
Oh,
but
God.
I need.
Oh, yeah. So Juji Mufu has 1.6 million followers on Instagram.
Actually, I did see that. Yes, I know what you're talking about.
And he bought my book, and now he's like a sprouting hero. But like, sprouting hero. And like, other than sprouting, like, I don't think we have anything in common whatsoever. But sprouting is our connection.
Right.
And I think that if you handed someone a big handful of sprouts and said, eat them, they'd probably give you the Heisman and push you away. If you gave them one little sprout, like when I went on my pitch meeting to the one publisher who's willing to meet me in New York, I brought like sprouts and I had recipes, etc. And she was eating one sprout at a time. And when you like clear your palate and eat one sprout at a time, it's powerful. It's really powerful. So I think the best example is to take the information, be authentic about it, and have patience. Like, the hardest people for you to convince are going to be your friends, your parents, your loved ones, the people around you. If you're talking to absolute strangers, it's very easy.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so let me think. I think I kind of want to go into, I think, one last topic. And like I said, I probably have a million questions that I could ask you. But I want to talk about, because you talked about this, the concept of food being a sense of a reward or a pleasure in your life. And so I think that one of the things that is really tough, because people are like, I don't want to swap out a bag of Doritos for a Sprout wrap. Like, to me, there's no difference, because I worked really hard and that's my snack and I love that and that's what I want. And the idea of that, we find this pleasure through our food. And, I think that there's so much pressure when it comes to eating healthy, and it's kind of seen as a punishment. And one of my views that I've always taken is, let's try to just get some good in. You don't have to worry about taking all the bad out per se, but let's just add in. And the incredible things about sprouts is that they're so powerful and they're so packed with nutrients that you don't have to just completely change your diet. If you add a cup in, let's start at half a cup a day, and you just add it in, right? You just put it on your burger, you put it in whatever you're eating, and then you start to just increase that a little bit. I think that's the way to get, to get people to feel the benefits without feeling that they're losing the pleasure or they're losing the reward of their food. Can you kind of talk about, I know for you jumped, right? You made that huge shift within a very short period. But for people that really do, they enjoy their food too much to do that, what are some of the ways that you can help people kind of get sprouts in? Like, just open the door. How do we open the door?
Well, in the Sprout book, we created 40 recipes. right? So you've seen the recipes, and they are done, professionally done. They're all raw, they're all vegan, they're 50% of the ingredients are sprouts, and they are delicious, right? So that's like one, you make the sprouts delicious and you make them an activity, so you're not just handing someone, a bale of hay and just say, oh, just stuff in your mouth.
Right.
And so I think that's one way, is making it delicious. There's other things that you can connect with people where they are. If someone is intellectually oriented, then there's the whole climate um, climate challenge about how the best thing for the planet is sprouts, because it's almost a 1-to-1 ratio of seeds and waters with maximum yield. So you can connect with someone like Do It for the Planet. If someone is overweight, then the interesting thing is, and are you familiar with Weight Watchers?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Right? So sprouts in the Weight Watcher system are 0 points. So if you're on Weight Watchers, you can eat as much sprouts as you want until you're not hungry or you're full, and have 0 points. So that's one part. The other thing is, if you are focused on vitamins, minerals, nutrients, right? Protein, and then sprouts are incredible because they check all the boxes. Like, and just think about it. I'm going to give you this little like magical thing I talk about with lentils. If you were to take a half a cup of lentils and you sprout them, they become 1 cup, right? So they just double. And when they double, you double the antioxidant levels, you triple the vitamin C levels, and you're increasing the fiber by at least 30 to 50%. So like the power, and 1 cup of lentils has about 7 grams of protein, and it's easy to eat. So if you were giving someone a choice, do you want to eat cooked lentils or sprouted lentils? Like, I can't imagine why someone would deliberately choose something that was lower energy, lower vibration, lower nutritionally packed. So there are arguments like that. Like, one, you could take 2 tablespoons of broccoli seeds and they will make 6 cups of broccoli sprouts. So it's exponential growth. And in 1 cup of broccoli sprouts has 60% of the recommended daily allowance of vitamin C, right, from sprouts. So the most important thing that I look for is making sure that people are getting wide variety of fiber sources, right? And fiber isn't coming from a cereal or a grain. Fiber is coming from a whole food, plant-based. And guess what, right? Animal products have no fiber, 0, right? So there's so many reasons to eat sprouts. So like the book is on a roar, right? People are getting the book. I'm using social media for the purpose of getting the message out there, and I'm doing the podcast. So I did the Rich Roll podcast, and Rich Roll on this podcast, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of millions of users, listen to his podcast. I can tell you that his Facebook group, Rich Roll Podcast Facebook group, has been taken over by sprouts. Like, people are sharing their sprouts, their sprouting successes, their sprouting messages. And so I think that it's going, like, what we need to do, Sharon, is you need to plant some seeds. You plant some seeds and they will sprout, and you could plant it physically, literally, figuratively, and they will sprout. And I am certain that these seeds will germinate and they will grow.
Love it. I love it. That's the metaphor. Okay, so I want to kind of just close with a few aspects. I think one of the I want to read one thing from your book because I think that anybody listening, I think this is so powerful. This is in your Nature's First Food portion of your book. The blueprint for the biological development and function of the plant is contained in the small seed and remains the same from seed to sprout. And I think when you realize that sprouts are the vehicle, right, of the perfect vehicle for nature. So if no matter where you're at in your health journey, if you want to get closer to nature, you want to feel your best, go back to nature. And the sprout is the easiest way. It is literally, it's the most, and then now we can get to the point. It's the easiest, it's the fastest, it's the most cost effective, it's the best for the environment, it's the most compassionate way. So when it comes to sprouts, there's no negative, there's no downside. It is completely the opposite. It can help your life in every single way possible. It's empowering, it's encouraging. And not only that, is that when you do something like this for yourself, the amount of self-love that you will feel just because you made such a powerful decision for yourself. I think you couldn't put a number on that. Making a decision to love yourself through your food, I think is my mission on life, is try to spread that message. And honestly, ever since I started sprouting, I don't think that I've ever felt more self-love through my food than a sprout. I mean, there's just no other way. I don't even know how. It's like a spiritual journey when you sprout with yourself. You're doing it for yourself, and then you feel so happy. And I would just encourage everybody here, try 1 cup. Take a cup and just sprout it. And get this book. If you don't have this book, there's going to be all the links, everything's associated here. We're going to be posting this all over social media. And get this book, read it, and it is the most encouraging and just the simplest way to just empower yourself and your children. If you have children, please get this book. Doug, you are an absolute hero for writing it. I think that you're helping modernize the way that we look at sprouts, and you're taking it into a form that everybody can understand. And I think you were the perfect person to do this because, look at the impact you've had in only 90 days, right? So I'm beyond, I have the chills thinking about, the way we're going to look at sprouts a year from now because of the influence this book has had. So please, if you haven't got it, please get the Sprout book by Doug Evans, and please follow him on all of his social medias. We'll have all of it linked below. But Doug, I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for what you're doing, because you are literally making an impact on this planet that you'll probably never be able to fully understand. So thank you so much for your time, and thank you for being here. And for everybody listening, thank you so much. Please feel free to follow Doug and reach out to him. And we will see you next time on Raw Conversations. Thank you.